those, then we just have to have this resolution. It was in your packet. So we just need to have, we've already passed them. It's not a matter of us repassing them. It's just a matter of us having a motion for this resolution. Yeah. No one likes to hear their own voices, do they? I need a lower voice. Anyway, we just need to have someone make a motion, and this will be a roll call vote to pass the resolution. We will be sending out, last time we sent out a letter to all of the residents, letting them know. We're seeing if we can do just a postcard. We sent that, see if it might be a little expensive for us to mail that out to everyone. So hopefully we'll maybe have that tomorrow. We can get that sent out. So informing everyone. So is there someone that would be willing to make a motion on this resolution? And it was, like I say, the one. Well, it's actually this is a city council meeting, but it is a work meeting of the city council. So it's the same. So, yeah, when we thought we'd sit down here because but it is a regular city council meeting. So. Am I correct, Reed?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I thought we'd be up there.
Yeah, well, we can move up there if you would sooner move up there. Yeah, no, it's our city council meeting, but it is a working city council meeting. That's why we thought we would sit down here, but we can move up there if you would sooner. I just thought sometimes when we're discussing, sometimes it's a little easier to be here than up there turning our microphones on and off. Okay. So the motion to approve resolution 2025-04 was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second was made by Councilmember Fowers. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we need to do this by roll call vote then. I will start with Councilmember Hill, Councilmember Wilcox,
Aye.
Councilmember Maraboni, Councilmember Fowers. Okay, motion carries. Okay. So the next thing on our agenda then is a discussion, and we've had a few discussions so far. We really wanted to have a discussion when Reed was able to be here. There are at least some tentative decisions, and the reason why we put these down below is if we talk about things tonight and we feel like we're ready, that's why we put a possible motion. If we're not, then we don't have to. But if we were, then we would need to have them listed as an agenda item so that we could go ahead and motion if we were. And so there are some things. So I know we've talked quite a few already about Smiths, but this will be our chance as a city council to discuss, and Reed can give us some input also. And so.
Yeah, if you're going to go ahead, it'd be nice to have some definitive motion to that effect, because it will require some changes to the general plan, to the map, and to the zoning map. And we can start, and actually just in the general code. And I can put all those together, working with Malcolm, but it's a fair amount of work, and I just do not do it unless you're going to move ahead with it, because that's fine. Maybe that's selfish on my part.
Well, and we talked about the development agreement too, which we've talked about that quite a bit, that anything we do would be contingent upon the development agreement. If they then would at least give us some time to work on that. If ever they come back, they've mentioned about possibly looking into some financing tools, but if it came back and it wasn't agreeable, if it's not in the development agreement, then this doesn't lock us into anything other than giving them some approval to tentative go ahead and get started on some things so we can start working.
Yeah, I think you do it in a way that if they can't do the things that you want, and I presume financing is certainly big, then all of it reverts back to where it is before. So you don't end up with a piece of property that's been rezoned, but this development doesn't go in.
Is it good to spend all of the money that we would have to spend to do this though, without some knowledge if they have the financial tools? I mean, like to go through writing up all of the stuff that you'd have to. It is,
I probably said that. Or I do a lot.
yeah,
I would guess it's not gonna take them too long. Find different ideas to what they're gonna do.
and just, we kind of gave them an idea of what we were expecting.
Is the funding the big issue on the bank or on the pump stations?
I think that was
One of the,
one of the big things, yeah, lift station. And like how the residents, the zoning behind for those individual residences were to be put together. I think that was another thing we had a recommendation. I would like to see it, but I guess my concern is we've given those recommendations. Are we on track with those? Or, I mean, they come back, are they saying, okay, we'll go ahead and comply with what you'd like, or are we still going down the same? We're just doing the same thing over and over, and they just keep coming back with the same thing.
I think the same thing was explained to the last time, because we all thought with utility tax and sales tax was included in it. But my question was, can you move forward with the CRA and leave Hooper City out of it? You know, because it's each individual entity that buys in or buys out. You know, it's not an all for one or one for all. It's each individual taxing entity has to agree to it. And so we don't have to agree to it. That's Hooper City. You know, we don't have to say, no, you can't have our property tax or whatever it is. But they were gonna, two big hitters are the school and the county, well, three big hitters and the fire department. So it was still unclear to me whether they were gonna ask for 50%, 70%. You know, they seemed to think that 50% was enough to cover it, but we never really did get an affirmative either way. So back to what we requested was that Hooper City didn't want to participate in the CRA. And so whether that was agreeable or not, I have no idea. You know,
So you didn't want to participate even with property tax? That would be a minimum contribution.
right.
And it would not be any existing property tax, it would only be new.
Well, the whole thing starting with the planning commission was that we didn't want Hooper City to fund any of the infrastructure improvements. You know, whether it's $10 or $1 million, that was either not funding it or it was funding it. You know, our request was that we didn't participate in that.
And I don't know if it makes a lot of difference dollar wise. I would think it's an easier sell for them, for the other districts, if they can say Hooper's putting in the same amount
Right.
of percentage property tax as you are.
Right.
But that's a sales issue. It's not I don't think monetarily you're talking.
Yeah, Montana, it's not that much. It's property tax, you don't charge hardly anything else.
Well, but it would just be the increase on the property tax anyway, so it would be on what that property was worth, Greenbelt, and it could be a little bit, but does that look like Hooper is very realistically
It wouldn't be.
helping? No, it wouldn't, that's what I'm saying, it's not the Greenbelt, it would just be the increment, but does that look like we're how does that look if we're a city that wants this and we say, but we're not even willing to participate in it at all?
Yeah, as I say, also as a sales tool, I think that's.
I mean, it would sound better to those other entities if we're participating, but if you look at what they're doing and providing for that tax base, the school district isn't gonna get any impact for several years. Once the development's done and people live there, then they will. The fire district has a little bit, they're gonna have to respond to any accidents, but they're not gonna have a huge burden. The city is gonna have a burden when they start building this, so if you look at what those tax dollars are supposed to support, it makes more sense than just sounds like we're greedy if we're asking for it, but we don't wanna participate. But when you stop and look at what those tax dollars are funding, I think it makes sense to have some of those defer. They're not getting rid of their tax, they're just deferring for a time and to
Right.
get it collected. So, and I don't think they have a lot on the line. The mosquito abatement isn't gonna have more mosquitoes.
type won't have anything at all. The school district would have an impact
The
as soon as there's
district would
kids.
be- As soon as there's kids, yeah.
One thing too is, this isn't just asking about, can we build a commercial development? This is asking, can we build a commercial development and build an entire community along with it? They didn't just come to us saying, you have a commercially zoned area, we would like to put a business in it. They'd come to us with an entire package about rezoning and doing everything else. If they came to us the other way, it wouldn't be requiring all of this rezoning stuff that they're asking for. That's another thing that I thought of. And according to that impact study, can we really afford it for the first few years? It's costly those first few years for us.
I'm on board with that. It seems like it's super messy for us with the CRA, so. There's other developments or other properties that need lift stations be developed in Hupper. So do we want to set a precedent? So we might enter into this CRA, but guess what? We have to do a couple more to be fair with everybody. So it just seems like, like I've said, I'm not against the commercial development. If you're going to develop it and make money off the citizens of Hooper and change it forever, then you guys pay for it. That's my position. I think they ought to fund it. Because I think we beat this horse to death. So we need to make a decision. Either we go with the our recommendations, or we move on. And I firmly believe there's something else. I don't think it's just the Smiths and the housing. There's bigger plans. I really believe that. And this is just the start of it. So we got to make sure we're doing the right thing, the right direction for our community. Because there's no looking back once this goes in. And you look at other cities, like surrounding cities that have done this, their property taxes have not gone down. They've actually gone up with commercial development. They have gone up, and that's absolutely true. Do we need tax-based revenue? Yes, we do. But is this the answer? I don't know. I think this is the first person that has approached this with this kind of a development. I think there could be better options. What they might look like, I don't know. But anyway, I'm 100% against CRA, us participating in this all. That's my opinion. I think we're paying ourselves a corner and setting us up to do multiple ones that are going to cost us, for the first 3 years, we're not going to make anything. We're going to go in the hole, $500-600 grand. Where's that going to come from? Well, let me tell you what's going to come from. We're going to have to raise property taxes to fund it. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen regardless, but it's going to come a lot faster than we think.
So a couple of thoughts with that. CRAs can only be used for commercial. So unless if we have another commercial development that wants to come to Hooper that
Sure.
wants a CRA, then like, for instance, if we have another development that's just only houses, that really doesn't
Well,
apply.
There's other commercial, future land use that's commercial that needs a pump station. So by Sinclair.
Yeah, well, part of that is housing and it's commercial.
Dude, it's an interesting discussion. I'm not sure the way it's been done in the past is a great system. The pioneering agreements have been challenging in my mind, and maybe not entirely fair. The thing about a CRA is those that are benefiting from the project itself, it's commercial, and in this case, the people that are building houses are paying for the cost of what's going on. Because that's where if there is a tax revenue, that's what comes from. And that would be true, I suppose, if you use that device to fund another pump station as well. Is that a fairer way than the city just putting it in? And then it would be total tax dollars, or trying to do a pioneering agreement, which is fine if all those developments you anticipate in the pioneering agreement happen quickly. If they don't, that developer is out a whole lot of money for a long time. And that's not entirely fair either. So it's all a matter of how you look at it.
Thing is to revisit at least like you just explained, that I agree with, but at least the developer makes the decision. I mean, they don't have to go into a binding agreement. They don't have, the city's not twisting their arm to do that. Let's just say if you want to develop it, then these are the, this is what you have to abide by with the agreement, and then they decide whether they want to do it or whether they don't want to do it. I guess, but for the most part, it's the board, because they kept on doing it. So.
So we're in unfamiliar territory here because we've never done this. This is really our first commercial development that's even asked to come to Hooper. So we don't know. We're really unfamiliar. The way I looked at it though, is I don't see what we have to lose. Because they said, so if we will, so far what we would have to say is to them is we will give you a consent to the, if you can go and find this, depending on the development agreement, and we have to all agree on that, then we would agree or we won't agree. But they're the ones doing all the work. So they go and see if they can do the CRA. If it comes back, it's not anything that we agree with, then what are we out? They're not asking us to put any money up front to do this. They're the ones that will go find out. So they will be the ones that will go to all the taxing and ask. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And because none of us know, like I'm the most familiar with any of the rest of us, we don't know that. I don't know why we wouldn't give it a try. Because yes, maybe there's someone else that'll come along. Like I mentioned last time, you've all been here a lot longer than I have, but has there been anybody else that has? If they have, did you turn them down or where?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're explaining. So if that's the case, why haven't they done that? Why haven't they been going around to the?
Because they can't. They don't, they're not authorized to go to Weber County and say, we're here acting for Hooper City, when Hooper City hasn't even given them the approval to act for us.
Okay, so they are asking for an approval of some kind.
And dependent upon if the financing, if that can, in the development agreement. And if it doesn't work out, then they walk or we walk, either one.
So the way I understand it is we have to change the land use map. We have to general plan, and we have to rezone it before they can even go and ask for money. So it's stamped approved, more or less.
Well, you can do it conditionally, so if they don't get it, it's reversed, but yes.
You can't.
Yes, that's what we would do. We would do it conditional. And because there's no safe way to do it but conditionally. It would have to be conditionally based on what they could get and on the development agreement. Because no, we're not giving anybody a blanket rezone, because if it falls through, then we've already committed to rezone a piece of ground. And when it comes to the general plan, from my interpretation of it, from what our general plan said, you already designated commercial, and you did designate that there was going to be some higher density in association with the commercial, but the land use map doesn't really reflect that, the future land use. So you had commercial, and the narrative of the general plan says about the possibility of having some higher density, but there isn't higher density. But yes, we do have to. So what you're saying, Ryan, is 100% correct, but it would be conditional, just like Reed said, we could put any conditions we want on it, but they at least have to have a go ahead from Hooper saying, go ahead and lease, because we don't know. We haven't even given them a conditional approval to even go look yet and see what they could do.
And just from experience, I would say 90% surety that they're gonna get approval from the taxing entities. If somebody asks. Most of them don't say no.
So I go back to my question, how did we afford it?
How do we
Those
afford
3 years,
What?
how did we afford those first 3 years?
But so those first 3 years, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the LRB, but those first 3 years was before the store was complete.
Right, so how did we
Correct.
afford that?
And so in the meantime, those first 3 years are going to be their construction costs. What costs will we have? Like,
The study shows that the city of Hooper will be down. How much was it, Bryce?
I don't know, because there's two different areas. One was, you know, probably 500,000 and the one was, the other seemed like it was 300,000. Something like that, because there's two different areas and I tried to get him to explain it to me, but I don't, maybe he didn't understand my question, but definitely there was a period of time that it was gonna cost us money.
But yes, because I saw those numbers too, but from my interpretation, that was before they started getting the tax base, because if Smith comes in and builds this, what will that cost the city? Like they will pay for this. So let's just start from ground run. So if they get all the taxing, like you're thinking, Ryan, they probably would, and they get the money and they put in the lift station, which is what one thing, and that maybe won't go in before they start construction. Maybe it will. I don't know. But what costs will Hooper necessarily have prior to them? I don't know what costs we would have, because if they put in houses,
They earmarked some.
Oh, I'm not sure I understand that either.
yeah, because if you do a development like Rawson's, how much did Rawson's cost Hooper City? Didn't they pay for their own infrastructure?
See, this is even bringing up questions right now to me. So what are they going to develop first? So the first time we met, and again, I'm just going by what was explained to us, like Stuart made it clear that he's not a residential developer. You know, his intent is that he'll put in the commercial and then he'll sell the property to a residential developer. So where does that play into this? It's like if they go in and build the Smiths first, and that's what was recommended to us by the planning commission. I think that's good. I wonder if it doesn't. If we rezone this, can he go ahead and resell the back portion to a residential developer? And then we're dealing with a zoning issue there with someone that wouldn't be.
I wonder if we can't address all that on development agreement.
Yeah.
That you won't authorize building homes until either all or some portion of the commercial is finished.
At least 6% of it or something.
Yeah, maybe all of it. maybe
Because Stuart said that
I
last
would say invest a ton of money there, good stuff.
He agreed last time to kind of phase it. You know, that maybe it wouldn't be all or none, it'd be phased so that only so much residential came and we had to meet certain thresholds with the commercial development as
Probably makes sense.
it could all be ironed out in the developer.
Put out development agreements. I guess you could ask the financial people what those costs were, but I'm not seeing what the costs are gonna be to the city.
These are what go into their costs, the first.
Like wear and tear and
Could be wear and tear on the roads, that kind of thing.
something like that.
Well, no, it's just showing the net fiscal benefit. So it's just showing.
These are the expenditures, the first in the estimate or in the study, these are the expenditures throughout the years. So the city's year one expenditure, right, is 11 grand, 36 grand, 61 grand in year three.
Well, we'll look at the breakout of what that is.
Public safety, public works, parks and rec,
Does the
and
sheriff
general
say
government.
you increase your fee because you have it developed?
No.
It depends on what's.
We look at the bottom net fiscal benefit. So.
That's just,
That's all entities though, right, county
Yeah.
and state. Yeah, the city, yeah, but our costs are here.
which you might not
And
necessarily.
yeah, I don't know his method of drawing these costs right here. I don't know how he calculated these. They're
They show a revenue that offsets that or just.
not for year 1, 2, or 3 because we just don't have any revenue produced yet.
Well, for example,
right here.
parks and recreation, how is that gonna change? I don't know.
So there's some kind of park built in there that they turn over to us, but I wouldn't think that'd be in year 1 or 2.
I guess
They
you
have
have
a
the sheriff.
1-year warranty and it's gonna take 1 year to build it at least, so.
The sheriff's determination of what you pay is based on 40% population and 60% calls for cities. That's not keep it off, public construction.
There may be some public works if you were involved, but I don't know, even you would know better than I would, Jared, what would even be involved.
Other than inspections, I mean, typically we charge them an inspection fee, so they're paying those anyway. I don't see a ton of public work involved in this.
Right off the get-go.
So write that into the development agreement.
Yeah.
There won't be any additional costs to the city. Those are minimum costs anyway. But, and I don't see that they're realistic.
I kind of understand the study differently, but I would want to read it before I really. I think that those are showing net state, like steady state, current state. I think that they took the study, took a CRA area, and then ran the calculations, and those are steady state and still something built. I think those are our real costs currently for that area in hypothetical nature. Does that make sense? So like whether we do this or not, I think we have a certain cost in the study of that CRA that was defined in that area. And I think those are the costs of that area, but that's just my opinion of it.
Just kind of a base.
Kind of a base level cost that's there, whether you do it or not. And it goes up, you can see proportionately as the development's done. But I think initially that's your cost, just whether you do this or not. I think you have a cost just in that area of the city, but I would have to dive into it to confirm that, but that's my feeling of the study, how it's done.
And Bryce, you thought that you might have others come in and offer options. That's possible. But I'll guarantee you, these folks are gonna build their facility somewhere. If it's not here, it'll be in Raleigh next door and West Haven next door. And so that another big grocery will only come in and build, something like, I don't think.
Does anybody ever have a discussion about what's gonna happen to our neighbors, like Weinigers, Kent's? Those stores are already struggling. I hate to be the big
Those stores.
bad guy and put people out of business just because we're building a store, but I think Weinigers on the bridge. They're going under. I think this will come under for sure, but. I don't know if we can.
But I don't, yes, I thought that too. I remember because Weinigers was there, we all went to Weinigers and then they built the Kents. And we thought, well, how will they ever survive? But they have. Then they built Winco and they still have survived. The thing is, but we have a city that we're trying to maintain. I mean, we have a city that if we do not have some kind of commercial base or a significant tax increase, we are not going to be able to keep sustaining our city. And I've thought about that. You know, people say, well, yeah, there's going to be so much more traffic on the road. I go on 5500 and maybe I stop at Kent's, maybe I go to Harmon's, maybe I go to Winco, but our city gets zero money anytime I go to any of those other stores. And I've heard it say, well, but how do we know that Smith's will stay in business? Because Smith's do stay in business.
Well, that means that.
Kroger's. It's not-
Kroger shutting down 60 stores nationwide.
Some of them, but that is Smith's. Kroger's is, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be some.
Yeah, I didn't see in Utah. I was told about the story, about the story last night from another mayor, but so.
I'm sure things change and they move, and then they figure all that out before they even ask, I think.
Yeah, they've done a lot of research on this location far before. I don't know when the first time they came and talked to you, Del. It's probably been a year, 2 years ago, maybe now, since they first came and they had done.
That fall. When I took over.
So at least close to 2 years
And they
then.
didn't tell us what store, by the way. They just came in and talked about it, business.
But anyway, my point with that was they probably have done research long before they ever came to Hooper to say, and someone that does stores, no, you do research long before you ever disclose a location. So I think they've done their research about coming here.
Problem I'm having with a lot of this is it's just kind of a moving target, you know, we have this survey done, this. You know, I'm hoping that this would give enlighten us, and then the more we look into this, well, now maybe it's not right, they're using information that's not applicable to Hooper or. And I just, and then we talk about a CRA and now all of a sudden it's a little bit of a moving target. You know, at first I thought it involved, you know, when the gal from the Stephanie Russell came, I mean, she went through all of this and it did apply to residents within a certain district or, but every time we talk about things, there's just something different than what the second time we talk about it is different than the first time, unless I'm just not understanding it. But you try to, come to a conclusion of the information we have, and then all of a sudden, it's, I'd say all of a sudden we're presented something new. How do we get the information on a CRA or, you know, I think this, developers agreement, you know, that carries a lot of weight in this. If things can be tied to that to where it's ironclad, if they don't do what see, my experience with developer agreements hasn't been most positive, because it's not the development, but it's the developer. They find loopholes in the developer's agreement. Some way they're not accountable for things that we thought they were accountable for, and then we end up in, you know, in things that are not all that positive. How do we get to what it actually is? This is what the benefit will be. This is what Hooper City's required to do or not required to do. Where do we get to the bottom of all of this? Because every time he's presented something, it just has a little different twist to it. The best thing I've heard is this developer's agreement. If everything is ironclad with the developer's agreement, I would feel a little more, you know, a little better about it. But I've also seen where I thought things were pretty ironclad with the developer's agreement with a development we had, and it ended up, all they did is fight it. The developers fought it and
Sued us.
end up suing it. You know, if they don't get their way, then they sue you. And it just seems like it would, if it's right, it should be right for them. It should be right for Hooper City. There shouldn't be anything that we're just trying to say, you know, we're trying to figure out but you said, you assigned to this. Well, we signed that, but it's not really what we meant, type thing. How do we work?
Well,
How do we
I guess
get
if
through
the whole process of having final rezone, having a final change in the general plan is contingent on agreeing on a development agreement, you've got to agree before they do. So it's, now, can you guarantee there's not anything in that agreement that isn't covered? Nobody can do that. But you can certainly put all of your collective minds together and try to make sure everything that you feel strongly about is in that agreement, and that they have to comply with it before they actually start digging. And that way you know where you're headed. All of that, including the zoning, would have to be in place before they can actually dig a hole, because they couldn't get a permit. So yeah, I guess I'm not seeing the concerns of funding being a big issue if that has to be provided some other way other than the city. You make that clear, and that's what has to happen. They can't do it, they won't do it.
Well, do we set a precedence for everybody who wants to bring commercial to add their own subdivisions with their commercial? You know, we do this for them, and then someone else wants to do commercial, but then they want to bring in their own base of housing to support their business. I mean, we've kind of done it for them. Are we going to have to do it for other people, or be at risk for a lawsuit? Or, I mean, how does that work? I mean, this isn't a straight cut commercial development.
the best thing?
Right.
The best thing is that
And
they
you're not
would
likely to have one like it again either.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, do we set a precedence for, other people to say, well, I want to bring in commercial development, but I have enough land, so I want quarter-acre lots, and I want you to change this, you do that for them, and I want to have additional housing.
They can say that, you granted or not granted, but
Yeah,
it's not gonna be the magnitude of this one.
right.
So
We're
you've
digging
got
grounds.
a different argument. I don't say they have legal grounds. They may have an argument that they can make to you. You voted for this, why do you vote for this?
So there would be no legal
I don't
grounds.
see legal grounds for that, no.
And I think too, Debbie, we always are the say. I mean, that's the thing. We are always the ones that are in control here. So with the developer agreement, and you're right, Dale, it needs to be written out. And you know this, and I've the last year and a half. And I'm a prevention person. You prevent it. I mean, if everything is as written as possible as we can, yes, some things maybe are going to come up, but we maybe can prevent that. If as clear as we can have it written, we make it as specific. And Debbie, if someone comes in and says, we want an apartment complex, are they going to sue us? We say no. Or even
Small
quarter
ones.
acres.
Yeah.
We can say
You see,
no.
It doesn't feel like final say because we told them, we don't want part of the CRA, but here we are talking about a CRA again. And so it doesn't feel like, yes, we have to say. I mean, we've been hammering about this CRA for quite a few meetings now, and that was something that the planning commission said we don't want part of. We said we really didn't want part of, and now we're still working on the CRA. So no, it doesn't feel like what we say is matters all the time.
Dell's motion was to not have a CRA, right?
Yes, what?
Your motion was to not have a CRA, right?
Yes.
But it didn't carry.
Yeah, three people didn't.
Well, because it wasn't,
Yeah, it didn't carry for another reason. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how much is a pump station cost?
2 million. Well, we had a bid and the contractor secured for 2 million, 1.9. And they said they'd hold it. We haven't talked to them recently, but.
I guess, hold on, just my point with that though was you guys, you say you've made it clear to them that you don't want a CRA, but then you just scooted around it to me that, did you? I don't know. You got out of it on a technicality, so tell them, you know what I mean? That's my point is if we're gonna, I'm not sure he really feels that way. Obviously, he's Pierre pestering us all the time about CRAs, so.
Some way of paying for a $2 million facility.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm for or against CRAs. I'm just saying I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think he has an inclination, but I don't know what his surefire thoughts are on it.
The city doesn't have $2 million to put in a lift station. We don't, or 1.9. So yeah, you're right. We somehow, how are we going to pay for that?
see, we never have had to.
Well,
That's the good,
but-
it's I never
I
had
think
that.
it should be asked, how are they gonna pay for it? It's just the cost of development. And I just, it just seems like we're getting really a lot of pressure to buy something that we're really not sure about. I mean, just pay for it. I mean, Kroger is a $1 billion company. We're the ones that are gonna make the least out of everybody. We're bottom of the totem pole as far as revenue. But granted, yes, it would be a good facility. However, you guys pay for it. That's my position.
But you look at the commercial,
So let them do pioneer agreements with the other developers. Let them handle all that mess, because in the CRA, we're supposed to facilitate that. Yeah, we take 10% of the income off of that to facilitate. Why do we want that mess? Just do a clean development and be done with it.
so it's not really the Smiths. Smiths has to have the lift station, but the houses are going to use the lift station more than the Smiths.
Do that to impact fees and pioneer agreements with other developers. They're gonna hook onto that. Yeah, it might be a little bit of work, and I suggested that to them, and it just seems like when they've known this is the problem since day one, but it hasn't been addressed. It's like, no, this is how it's gonna be. You're gonna take this or not take it at all. But I think there's another option, I think they should pay for it. I don't think Hooper residents should pay for any of it.
But we aren't paying for it. That's, I guess, the difference. I don't see where the Hooper residents are paying for it.
Well,
They will, the ones that buy the
we are-
lots.
We are
Well-
some of our revenue, which is not a lot, but yeah, we will be. And I think you're looking at just financial, but what's gonna come after this development is higher density. It's gonna be pushed right down our throats through the state legislature. I promise you that. There's that legacy corridor. So they're gonna push for a higher density all the way down to support this project. And that's probably gonna happen. We're not gonna have a lot of say about it. So,
Well,
yeah, we are gonna pay for it.
higher density is part of this review in order to get
Right.
to get the retail taxes, the sales tax that we're supposed to have. We don't have enough residents in Hooper to generate the revenue that they would like to see us generate. We've got to have more people,
They're estimating quite an increase in our population to support it.
which we,
They're-
I mean, we realize people need, I mean, I hear this all the time, this housing thing, and you don't attend a meeting, any group, but you don't hear about the housing. And that's not always true in every state. You know, you go in other places and that's not the focus of their state legislature, but it is here. But it still should be something that I always go with this standard of life, the standard of living. Whatever we want to make it something, whatever we bring in should improve that, not take away from it. And I don't know how many meetings I attended where I just like someone to show us an example. Just show us an example of what this has done to that area that,
Syracuse City,
huh?
Syracuse City.
Are they an example of something that they really wanted and now all of a sudden it's put in there? Is there standard of living?
Property tax.
Every,
All over, and all the infrastructure. Their promise to their citizens was, oh, we won't raise property taxes. You know, we got commercial coming in. It's gonna pay for everything, and now look what happened. They had to raise property taxes.
So I guess my question is, when you redid the general plan and you put commercial along 5,500, were you really anticipating there would be commercial? Because it doesn't sound like you want commercial.
Well,
So
no.
so what, well,
We're
well, that seems, yes, but so I guess I have a little different perspective on it. I'm as much for rural as anybody, as much as anybody. I am. But our general plan calls for commercial along 5,500. That was done under all of you, that you said commercial along there. And we've had a really excellent commercial opportunity that was presented, Dell, to you when you were mayor. And
what?
about this development was presented to you before.
No, see, you're talking about something that you're making it sound like we had more information than.
Well, and I don't know. I'm
Okay,
just,
so you don't know. So
it started with you.
that's when we.
Yes, it started.
And said they
Yeah.
had a-
Yeah, so we have a place already that we can have commercial, a chance for some commercial zoning. We have a commercial development that wants to come to Hooper, which other mayors are saying we would gladly take it because Smiths do a high quality store. They're not asking for extremely high density. They've said third acre, half acre, and yes, some patio homes in the middle, which is what our planning commission recommended, having it all. That I don't see that they've really came and asked for anything that you didn't already say you wanted within the general plan. So I guess I'm,
A lift station as well. You put in our way to.
Well,
To take
let me
it.
ask you, so the other developers that are around there that wanted to develop, was there any, yeah, it's residential, but did they ever want the city to help pitch in on the lift station?
They knew we wouldn't.
They
They
knew we
knew the city couldn't afford it, so they didn't have.
That's why they haven't developed.
that's where they.
Right. So there again, everyone that's gonna benefit can pitch in through impact fees and pioneer agreements and work it that way.
And let them do the work.
Let them do it.
I think the Ross deal, you know, didn't they want the city to get involved to figure out how they were gonna get paid back as they developed that piece of property? And we said, that's on you, basically. That's you to figure that out. The city doesn't wanna collect your money and give it to you. You know, so, yeah, let them figure it out.
Yeah, if they want to, if they came to us and said, here, we've got this figured out for the lift station, this, you know, we want to build this and then work with us on this housing, this would be an entirely different conversation. But that's not what they're doing. They, like Ryan said, they want us to help them solve their problems. And that's not what the city's for.
Well, the city, if you do a pioneering agreement, the city still does it. That's who's doing the process. they're gonna get their money back through impact fees that are collected on their lots since the city collected. This is just a different way for the city to collect the money, and a lot of it's coming from the district, has nothing to do with the city. But if you do pioneering agreements, it's gonna be the city that collects it in impact fees. That's how it's gonna
I don't have to do a impact fee analysis and do a study for that to set the fee.
Don't Rosslyn's have to collect their own impact fees?
So they collected their on-site, the part they were responsible for, and then we will collect something like on the Torgale piece through the impact fee and reimburse them.
So they're part of their development, they collect themselves with their own.
Yeah, they're on-site, yeah, the part that they were just for them.
Well, I think they sold their lots for more money.
Did the city do the impact fee study? Jared, who did that? The city did that? And did the city pay for that, for the impact fee study or? was that-
But I don't know for sure, off the top of my head, I believe we did. I mean, if we're gonna charge the impact fee, we have to go through that process.
So there would be some expense into the city if we had to do that. And then, like you said, Reed would be responsible. I just, my thinking is, why not let them try? Well, I don't see what we're out. If they go and do and talk to the other entities and come back and say, this is what it is and we don't like it, then at that time we say, we don't like it. I
Okay,
just
so
don't
what
see
does
what
it
there
take
is.
For that to happen? Explain to us then.
Yeah,
What it takes for them to just go out and find out this information. That, I think that's the part.
Cause you have it on the east side, right?
Pictures.
There's a couple of one waters, that being impact fee, but not significant.
So are we gonna force the residents in that lift station zone to connect to sewer? Once that's done?
You can, I got a scathing call from the state one day, we can't blame it on state law. We can pass our own ordinance and say that if it's available, you have to connect. But we don't currently have that. In new development, we require that, but making existing.
I hate to pass it on any cost whatsoever to existing residents. You know, to force people to hook up to it, if it's not their choice, shouldn't be a requirement.
And we did that line that's laid down there and actually stubbed in for the future station. All of those homes have a lateral to them for future, so.
Bill, was your question, what would it take for them to assess CRA participation or
Yeah.
assess impact fee?
Well, both. Whatever.
so
What is it?
what agreement would they need to have from us? Like a conditional agreement based on the development agreement? What do we need to do as a council be able to give to Terra Strata so they could go out and start working on the C?
So which part of the,
Okay. If they were working on the CRA to see,
they're working on CRA that maybe doesn't exclude the city.
yes, that would include Hooper City as part of it. Because I think when they were here last time, they asked if we would, and then we ran out of time, if we could even give them a conditional agreement that they would give them permission to go do that. But if they do all that, because it was kind of like, well, go do this, and this came back good, and then we said, well, okay, this came back good, but we still haven't told them they can go ahead and do it. And they spent, like planning commission said, let's have them do this. So they went and spent 13,000, came back, the numbers were positive, but we still haven't told them we will go ahead with it.
Well,
So-
this didn't, as this was explained to us, this wasn't a totally positive thing. It showed that we were going whole on this. And the number of residents that it would take to support this is something, how many years down the road did that take us? Like 30. So,
Well-
so I don't know.
I think it did come back positive. What you're
Well,
looking
it's
at
just
that bottom is it showing when it comes out net positive for as far as the sales tax, because those were the first 3 years they were building it.
I think what Dell means is it was not the numbers that they told us initially. They were lower numbers. Because initially they told us some grandiose numbers. And this study did not support the numbers that they told us.
172,000.
They told us somewhere around 500.
Do you guys want Terra Strata to go look into getting participation for the CRA?
Well, it's not the CRA. We were talking about something totally different before I went back to the CRA.
Yeah.
We were talking about pioneering agreements.
Well, that's why I clarified with Bill. I don't know which one you wanted to. Was it looking
Well,
into
that-
getting pioneering agreements or looking into the CRAs? I just want to get them to work on one of them, either one.
Well, their interest is in the CRA, and I'm not sure I even understand now, because initially, when the county came and presented that to us, there was responsibilities of those people who lived within that district. Is how, there's the word Stephanie used. Their taxes would increase, but not up to, it only had to go up to a certain mill, she called it. They could only raise their taxes a certain amount. Sorry. To pay for that. And,
But that's what you
So-
explained last time.
but so here we are talking about affordable housing on one hand, and on the other hand, we're saying, but the people that will be building in this affordable housing area, now their property taxes are going to go up to help cover the costs of living there. But it was only limited to them.
Yeah, but property taxes won't necessarily, that they would have to pay quite a big impact fee if they're paying for the lift station, but the property taxes won't. Well, maybe then we just need to decide then. Are we willing to let Terra Strata go look into doing a CRA? If we're not, then there's no sense even working on some.
So CRA, city involved.
Well, with the city involved or without the city involved, either way, I don't think it looks very positive to say don't want to be involved if they're, like you said, with their bargaining to go say,
The sale.
yeah,
But would it justify if you said, look, it shows we're gonna go in the hole the first 3 years, that's why we don't wanna give up our tax. That's our contribution. But I get you guys, you don't want the taxpayers paying for it and you don't want the city writing checks. But if we use money that would have gone to another taxing entity,
And never would have come through us.
never would have came to us either way, maybe it's not a bad tool, but I think you
Yeah.
just need to decide whether you're.
There's probably what they're gonna say is, Hooper's not contributing enough. You need to raise your property tax to contribute more.
Generally, they have policies, Ryan. This is kind of how it was described to us. They say early on they didn't, but now the taxpayers have policies. Do you guys have a policy that you're familiar with for CRA participation?
Well, we've
Well,
never done it.
but we could find out.
Well, not us, the fire. Like the school district generally, they say, well, this is our policy for CRA participation. And then, Stuart will come and say, Hooper wants to do the CRA. Then they'll check the boxes on all their policy. And if they're not contributing at certain rates, then they're no go, something like that.
Those boards can say no
Yeah,
independently of the number,
Gotcha.
you know, so.
So I guess if you just set the parameters, we don't want to participate, we're not writing any checks. If you can get the school district to pay for your lift station, go for it. I don't know how you feel. That's kind of how I'm in a nutshell. Is that really what we're giving the opportunity to ask?
Or do we tell them, hey, go to Doug Hamblin and go to this guy and go to this guy that all want to develop over here? Would they participate with you in building the education? Do it.
One of those was willing to build it originally,
Hmm.
just for his development.
You're really close to it, wasn't it? So I think, that's my perspective. If they did the legwork to go to 3 or 4 different developers that are gonna participate in this lift station, I think they would get buy-in from everyone on what percentage and what cost or, how much for each one, that's up to them to figure out.
So this would be more like a pioneering agreement.
Let them pass along the cost to their people
When they
that sell
sell
lots, when they sell, just like Rawson's do.
but the city has the expense of doing the sewer impact fee first. So we have to pay for that. And then the city would be the one responsible for the pioneering agreement. So it's not like the city's completely washing their hands. And I don't know how much that impact fee study is. I would suspect if you
Yeah, I don't remember
Yes.
exactly. It's not too significant. Um, But it does include other properties than the ones we've mentioned. That region's quite big. It crosses 5,500. So there would be other potential
Elections.
people that would be paying into it eventually that aren't in the picture right now.
Well, but let's go back to that CRA issue. If the city doesn't participate in that, under the argument that was made a minute ago, that you're going to put costs in for other areas anyway, or you're opposed to them doing the CRA with the other entities. Seems to me if there's a lift station that's going to benefit everyone, that maybe the school district ought to pay some, maybe the county ought to pay some. And maybe the fire district should pay some. I don't know.
If we could make that agreement that Hooper doesn't have to pay any, are you even agreeable to the CRA then, or still not? And again, we're not agreeing to it because we don't know yet. All we would be agreeing is for them to go try. And if it comes
And they'd have
back,
the option of doing some of it through agreements with developers.
I think either way, we end up with an impact fee analysis and impact fee, because sooner or later, someone's gonna wanna tie onto that system that isn't in the picture, right?
So the analysis agreements, basically the area of impact that we have to pay into at some point.
The area that's serviced by them.
And then it takes their real costs and then deducts what their portion of it is. And the overage they get reimbursed for as those come in, as those impact fees come in.
So I guess that's the question. Are you willing to consider some type of CRA if the city's not involved in, or if you're not, then tell them that. They can decide whether they want to move ahead on a different basis or not.
Well, we're talking about two different things. Yeah. CRA. Or,
Well, I guess to tie those two things together, and I don't mean to overspeak, you can always tell me to shut up, but with both of them, do they even need like our approval to do either of those? You get what I mean? Like, do they need a conditional approval to go say, hey, we're gonna do a lift station and me and Doug Hamlin have made an agreement that's gonna pay me back X?
Certainly don't need that for that.
Yeah, and in the CRA, if they say, hey, we wanna do this project for Hooper, city has zero participation, but the fire district's contributing X, do they need your approval for that?
they do. They,
we need conditional.
a conditional approval. Yes, a conditional approval, because they can't just go to a county and say, because they could go anytime. They do have to have some kind of approval from us. They can't just go to Weber School District and say, can we do a CRA for Hooper? They'll say, well, is Hooper agreeable to this? Well, no, we don't know. So we have to give them some kind of approval. But again, it can be a conditional approval and we put the conditions on it.
So what's our, besides this, what's our other hangups? You know what I mean, let the money aside. CRA is, everything else aside, what are the other hangups?
I think that's the biggest one for me is just what will it cost? What will it cost? Cause it just seems like it always does.
So the commercial, everybody's okay with the commercial development. You had that on the map to have commercials, so we're okay with that. Do you have other questions about the housing portion? Then I know last time it was brought up about the 1/3 acre, the 1/2 acre with some in the middle,
What's in the middle? Patio.
patio homes or,
We've got an ordinance that for patio homes that is pretty good.
it would be beneficial if we could incorporate some moderate income housing. Just a side note, our moderate income housing plan is due August 1st, and you go back and look at our strategies from last year, and we haven't really done anything towards those strategies as far as moderate income housing.
So, well, that's another question, but you know, what if your plan isn't complete? I mean, this is the very question we went down and met with, you know, the Speaker of the House about, that you were there too. If you have a plan and it's still in the process, it's not complete, are they still having us add on to that? Well, what if we're not even done with this? What if all of our,
Yeah,
but the patio homes, these lower lot,
Do they qualify for moderate income?
mhm.
yeah. They do.
So
And it doesn't-
patio homes that are-
Sure.
And it doesn't need to be complete. You're right, Dale. It doesn't need to be complete, but we have to be showing that we're doing something towards it. So you read what we said last year we were going to do, and part of even last year's was, because even last year, this time we were talking about Smiths and maybe doing some higher density around that. And we haven't done anything. So now this year, what do we say? Well, we're still working on that and we haven't moved on.
Higher density doesn't always mean moderate income.
No, I'm saying if we specified some,
Yeah,
like when if we
specify higher.
specified some moderate income
What
housing
we,
as part of it.
you know, what the
Yeah.
planning commission recommended was certainly a lot denser by far than 3/4 acre lots. And
We did.
that is what the land use map shows that today. It's all residential zoning with commercial on the front and everything behind is 3/4 acre lots. Well, no, we're putting higher density than that.
Yeah.
So back to the original question. If you're okay with the development, aside from the funding, then why don't you just send it back to them? And if you're willing to consider a CRA that you're not involved in, they can look into that. If you're not, then they'll have to look at something else, but at least give them some guidance as to where you're at.
In there, they ran on about 75 houses. Yeah.
I think it was 9.
But I think that was when it was all patio. But if you ended up with a third and half and then some patio, I don't know. Jared could maybe figure that out for us. What?
There's small, you guys are choking on a really big number, $2 million. You think about that. If you pass, if you pass 100% of that onto those lots, 75 lots, that's less than $6,000 a lot impact. So if Smith's funded half of that for the lift station, the other half got passed onto those lots. At 75 lots, that's $13,000 a lot. That's nothing. So, I mean, that 2 million is a big number, but I think the hard part is that it comes out of Terra Strong's end.
Mhm.
That's why they're pushing so hard. Or if it goes to CRA.
Well, I guess one thing to consider for them to consider, they cough up to 2 million, but they do get some of that back. These other developers are gonna have to pay. We don't keep that, we
That's the point.
collect it.
That would be less than your green funds.
Yeah.
What you can't do is force this development to pay for the portion of the lift station that doesn't benefit them.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that lift station is gonna service 3 times the number of houses that they're gonna put in, you can't take all of it out of these houses. You keep it, it's illegal.
Right.
Like they said, they'd have 2 toilets and no showers. And so they're not going to be using the significant portion of the station. But like you said, the lift station's got to be done by the time the first house is in.
Yeah.
Jordan, go back to that question I asked before. I mean, willing to let them look at both possible funding methods or not? If not, tell them that, it's be done.
And back to my question, what else is there in? What else? I'll tell you what my hang up is. On day one, we got the LRB study back and I saw 173,000 a year for this monstrosity between 1% sales tax, utility tax and property tax, we're only making 173,000 a year over 25 years. Seems like a lot of work for that much money of revenue. You know what I mean? I mean, it just seems like, I don't know. And we're banking on all this money being spent at this place to to generate that revenue. 1% is measly pennies compared to what the county and state rake in on our dime. It just seems so minuscule compared to what we're trying to get out of it. Does that make sense?
Well, am I not reading this schedule up there right? It looks to me like your revenues in the fourth year are 445,000, and your expenses are 175.
There's one that has,
What's the net fiscal benefit at the very bottom?
Well, that's all.
That's all the entities.
Yeah.
If you take
The
the,
bottom.
you take the four county, you take the 444, which is the city revenue they project. And then subtract from that total cost of the city of 175. That's about 250,000, something like that.
Yeah, and that's broken out in here. There's a table that does it, county,
Plus
city.
we get more
state.
money on property tax too, not just the sales
That's
tax.
including that. That's the
Well,
property tax.
the one up there is just the
And
sales
That's
tax.
all of it together.
Well, if you took the CRA incentive out for the city, that's 10,000 a year, so you add that to your reduce the expenses. That's that first one there.
Yeah, your city revenue. Like year 444, minus your city expenditures. 175.
175 less than 9,000, so it'll be 165. So that'd be your revenue for the first year. For
What
the,
we did is we added that entire thing up over 25 years. And there's a percentage, I can't remember what the percentage is, it's on another chart. This, it includes, inflation. What your dollar is worth today versus what it's worth in 25 years. That's where we
Yeah.
came up with the 170 period.
yeah, it was 7 million for the 25 years.
Right.
That adjusted with inflation was 4 points, and that's what's getting 175. So they actually projected out the 25 years.
Ryan, what did Cammie tell you that she saw Kaysville make? I know she talked to you out front and said it was significantly more than this. LRB has said this is worst case scenario. And I know Cammie who did the taxes for Kaysville, and it was significantly higher than this. And every store I called, it was significantly higher than this. And again, I guess my question is, why did we put then we want commercial if we're really now saying, do we want commercial or
We do.
but what,
We want this.
but what commercial is
This
going to,
option A, this is what I've been told. Like we're B, C, and D.
but what commercial is going to bring us more revenue than a grocery store? Well, you heard the Roy Mayor, what did he say brings them the very most revenue? The grocery stores. Yeah, but the grocery stores. Yeah, by far, any mayor will tell you the very most tax revenue they get is from a grocery store. It is.
1%. We still, it's all 1%.
It is, but it's 1% more than we're going to get from any other place. I guess I look at this. So, maybe if it is, and even what if it's only 200,000? When if 10 years down the road, it's 500,000. It's more than we have now, right?
What of having it? Is it worth 200,000?
Yeah. So I guess I'm not seeing maybe the adverse effects.
When you look at,
You are.
you look at West Point and you look at Kaysville, they have a lot higher density. And I drove by the Kaysville, yeah, it's a nice place, but look around it, that's what Hooker will become.
Right.
That's exactly what it becomes, just like West Kaysville.
And my friends, I have numerous friends that live there because I worked in Davis. And I worked the Kaysville West. This area. They said that it completely changed their city. And they, in retaliation, they won't shop there, they go to Bowens.
So I guess the question is then, are you saying then you don't even want this development at all? It's not even the CRA, you just plain don't want the development.
That's why.
Yeah, what is it that,
I'm just wondering, like Ryan, is it worth it? I mean, especially for the small amount that we're getting for what it's going to impact our city. And the CRA I'm not for the CRA at all. And, I just wonder if it's worth it to Hooper, or if we should go out there and solicit, see what we can solicit. I think a smaller store would be great out here.
so again, at the time you've been on city council, have you solicited any stores? Have any stores came to you? What other options have you had?
Well, we had other things going on that we could do. There's committees that we could set up. There's lots of things. I mean, to be honest, we were never put in a spot budget-wise that we were in such a financial problem. We were going along and doing okay. So now we're in a financial horrible situation. So now it's more important than ever. So that, I
I mean, 25 years, balance the budget every single
Right.
year, right?
we never had a problem.
We were never told how, unfortunately today, because we're gonna be unincorporated, we're gonna go back to the counter.
Right.
Well, I'm kind of tired of hearing that, because 25 years, that hasn't even been an option. And now all of a sudden it is, just because we don't have commercial. And so how urgent really is it? We balance the budget every single year and had extra every single year. We've never gone in the hole. We've never increased property taxes in 25 years. We haven't used that tool at all once. And now we're talking about inappropriate because we're in the hole. So I just don't buy it.
So not to get off, but because you brought it up, let's talk about this really quickly then. So you have a brand new sewer system and you have brand new sewer pumps. And so I'm sure no one thought we should save money to have sewer pumps. And so we didn't. Now we don't have a brand new sewer system. We have an 18-year-old sewer system that we still owe $7 million for, and we have pumps that are failing. I already sent you all that email because we had the one pump that failed. There's two pumps that run, one pump, then the next pump, then the next pump. The pump that hasn't failed yet is every bit as old. Do we have money set aside in our sewer to buy, Jared would know how many new pumps? We don't. We saved up so many years to be able to do road projects. So now this year we're doing some road projects. How many years are we going to have to save up until we do? So it's not a matter we're not balancing the budget. Absolutely, we have to, because we live in the state of Utah. We balance our budget, but do we have any money set aside to take care of a city now that is 25 years old, that does have things that need to be fixed, and we have never saved money to fix them? Jared and I talk almost daily about road projects that need to be done, about pipes underneath roads that are failing. We have this road we're going to blacktop, but underneath the road is a pipe that's going to collapse. So do we pay the money and blacktop the road, or do we take money that we don't have to fix the pipe first before we blacktop the road? We are a city that's been a city here for 25 years. And what are we doing to save money to progress that city forward? And we haven't. And all of you sat through all of those budget meetings, and did any of you see millions of dollars left over to fix? Because if we fixed every project on Jared's list, if we fixed half the projects on Jared's list, we would be through every dime we have in the city. And he could probably today give us 10 more projects that need to be done. It's better than zero, isn't it? So where do we start?
But what that's those roads and our sewer.
But again, let's talk about it. If I already mentioned, I drive at 5,500, whether I go to Kent's, whether I go to Winco, whether I go to Harmon's, who gets my money when I go to Kent's? Not Hooper. And I still have to drive on the road.
Still, we would require so many more people coming to Hooper to shop there to get the revenue that we need.
Not coming from Hooper up our roads. They'd be going across and on their roads, not ours. They might be coming down from Roy. 5,500 is not our road. It is. half of it, half of 47's our road. Yeah, not all of it. Yeah. But so I think we're putting our head in the sand if we keep saying, Hooper, we're doing fine financially. We aren't. And so we've had somebody come along that already presented an idea before I was here. Here's something that could help. And now we're just saying, we zoned something for commercial in our future use. Now commercial wants to come and we say, no, we don't really want you.
And that's not what it is. It does the cost outweigh benefits. That's what I'm looking at. I have to do that at home.
Sure.
Is buying this gonna outweigh, what I paid for it, the benefits or what? And that's what I'm looking at for the city is what we're gonna have to do here, going to outweigh what we're getting.
Sure.
for it.
Yeah. And I think it does. I think the study showed it did. You talk to any other mayor in Weber County, they will tell you, yes, that's how their cities stay afloat, is they have commercial. Reed had me right at the get-go to call some of the other Smiths, which I did. And I presented those numbers, but it didn't really matter because clearly those numbers were in a positive. But we have to start somewhere. We can't just say, well, we don't want it now. We need the money now. Well, 2 years from now, we need the money now. Well, how do we ever get that if we don't start somewhere?
Right, but they didn't come to us with a clean situation. They came to us with a lot of, the lift station, the houses. No one just came and presented us a commercial development.
Well, the lift station was there before then.
Right.
That-
No one just.
that we still, by the
"I'll
way,
take care of that.
We owe $85,000 still for the design of the lift station, which we haven't paid.
But if they didn't just come to us and say, I'll take care of the infrastructure that's needed for my project. Here, we would like to do a commercial project in your city. That's what I would have really, really appreciated from someone. And we've got all these extra things attached to it. So, it's like, are they worth it?
So again, then, I guess we just need to decide what it is you really want then. You're not even okay with the development. You're okay with the development, not the CRA.
I think ultimately, you make money out of it, though. You're certainly not
Yeah.
gonna lose money. Probably make a lot of money. Maybe not a lot, but you're not gonna lose money. It looks like it's gonna cost you at the maximum, maybe, what, $60,000 in the third year or something like that. Assuming that those numbers are right, which I question. I think the bigger issue than the money is, do you want to have this in your city? And if you do, if it's a convenience for the people in the city, and if they want to have a grocery store and the things that come along with it, restaurants and so forth close by, you do it. If you don't, then you don't. And I'm kind of biased because I live in an area where all those things are there. And my wife would die if I told her she had to drive 10 miles to get to the grocery store.
Or we drive 5 miles to everything we can have.
So that's in my mind, a bigger issue is, if you're gonna be a city, shouldn't you have those kind of things in a city? And if you're gonna have these things, is there a better opportunity than the one you have here? Maybe. But I don't see it coming along anytime soon, because if you don't take this one, they're gonna build somewhere else close by, and that's gonna defeat anybody else wanting to come in here and build, I think. So that's the issue in my mind. I don't think the money is as big an issue as all of you do, because I think it'll all work out. And if you want to tell them they have to do a pioneering agreement, they'll probably figure out a way to do that. If you want to use a CRA that doesn't involve the city, they can probably do that. Bigger issue is, do you want to have the development or don't you?
Where's my A-ball?
Give you the answer.
Well, you know what? Again, that's what I think then. If we just need to decide, like Reed saying, what you want, because again, it was going to be a conditional approval. We put the conditions on it. if you don't want the CRA, if you do want it, let them go try. If we don't, I think like Reed said, they can come up with whatever, but you need to decide if it's even something you're even, I mean, I thought as of last meeting, everybody was a little more agreeable because, you know, Dow, you'd made the motion and Ryan, or excuse me, Bryce, you had seconded it. And then the others I thought didn't because it wasn't what the motion was on the agenda. But now are you saying, well, I don't know. I honestly don't know now what we're saying.
But, you know, what, just like I said to begin with, if I could look at something and reasonably feel like, okay, this really is the straight stuff. This is what they're willing to do, and they're, you know, I think we want to see development, not development. I think we want to see some type of commercial. That's why we have a commercial area. But I look back at, you know, you go back, well, what do the citizens want? Well, no one wanted a big box store. And I don't know if this is considered that. I think but some of them just wanted that feel of, even to say that there would be like a walkable Main Street. I know that we had our meetings, which I think some of us were part of that. It means where you have a Main Street, you can walk down and there's a grocery store, there's jobs, and you know, that might be, it is a lot different than anything else around us. But I'm not convinced that everything around us, including Kaysville, Syracuse, West Point, that's not a convincing sell for me that this is working in their cities because of everything that's happened since. Plain City, maybe. You know, that was a little smaller store. Kent's Market that went out there, I think it really did help them a lot. They've got some other, you know, other businesses around it, credit union and whatnot. But the higher density around it, that's not really part of it. So I feel like, you know, I think we want this business, but when we put that motion out there before, it was a motion that we would like them to come on our terms, you know, not just have something forced on us and use some, you know, I felt like there was a tactic, like if we don't do this, we will be disincorporated and moved back into the county, or maybe even Royce City will be annex us into them. I mean, those were stories that were going around. I don't know where they started, but I've never had that fear of that happening. So I'm for looking at a grocery store, and I think if we just look at our terms.
So what are the terms?
Well, you know, I thought we laid them out. You know, I think our terms was that, you know, the grocery store was built first. We don't have any part of the lift station. There's a patio type zoning behind it that requires 40% of that is open space. I think I don't know if we all agreed with changing the residential lots, but it seemed like that around the west and north side of that, there could be some single family housing where they actually owned the lot. It wasn't a patio type, they actually owned a 3rd-acre lot.
What is the 40% space? Is it a park or is it something?
It could be,
The ordinance is written as kind of all inclusive, yeah.
yeah, it could be.
I think it excluded roads, but it included yards and amenities,
Yards, that's
stuff like that.
HOA owned and managed or something.
Anything that's common ground.
That could be common.
Well, no, not even common ground, like the patio homes, even their own lawns on their.
But they don't
houses.
own it. We'll see,
Yeah.
that's still.
Well, we have an ordinance for it either way.
Yeah, we have-
It's clear. It's clear. They could, yeah, it's clear. They could reference the ordinance and do it just like Country View did.
Could be, yeah. Could be a playground, or could be pickleball court, like they. It's like that. It could be just common ground. Anyway, that's my, and if we can zero in on those things, I was pretty comfortable with what the planning commission recommended, and it seemed like it fit the bill. Thing we've got to appreciate is the fact that our general plan is not that old. And there were many that participated in that. They participated in the survey, had the work group meetings, and I think we had a real good feel for how, I mean, the reason people, they're moving away from places like a Kaysville. I mean, I could take you right to the home of someone that moved right from Kaysville. You're a friend with it. And the reason they came here is because of a certain feel Hooper had. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know, being just a little bit different. But if we're different, people might want to move here.
That's what you got a home.
So.
All right, so is that a consensus that you want those kind of things or not?
Well, like I said last time, I don't, because they told us up front, no CRA, no project. So maybe we'll just call their bluff.
And if that's what they're saying, then that's 100%.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah, they tell us that, but to your point, I don't know. They say that, but we'll
Here's the
see
deal.
when we bring it to them.
They brought us the deal. And we're the only ones budging. We're the only ones making concessions. They haven't budged at all, other than the housing component can all be worked out. I mean, that's not a big deal to me. But they haven't budgeted at all. We have, or we've been required to. So, so I'm okay to call it, you know, like, hey, if you can't do this, then it's not gonna work for us.
Yeah, I feel the same way about that.
Debbie and Ryan, you feel the same way about it? So you guys feel the same way, Ryan and Debbie?
That's CRA.
No, just about it was essentially the motion that got put forward that didn't carry. It's that same motion. And then irrelevant of whether Terra Strata is, you know, if they are really gonna do that or not, I don't know. It's up to them, but.
Or 2 times ago, when we said, you know, because they said, CRA.
Yeah.
We have response, yes or no.
Well, then that seems to make you think they're sticking around for a reason, because maybe they'll do it without a CRA.
Part right there, it's like, I thought we were pretty clear. I think we were pretty clear. Right to begin with. But
One thing I just, not to wordsmith what you said, but you said no city participation. So I could view that as no CRA at all, or I could view that as the CRA, but not Hooper City participating. Do we really care if the other entities give their money towards it? That's a question, just for clarity.
like, more like a pioneering agreement.
Well, no, if the school district
Oh,
says,
yeah, well, I see.
School district.
Oh, yeah, okay, I see what you mean, Jared. Yeah, I don't.
either way, our taxpayers are gonna pay that money. It's just, does it go to the school district's coffers? Or if they're willing to give up a certain percentage to pay for this lift station?
Yeah, it's all taxpayers. Just against the area.
Yeah.
Tax the-
Yeah, the CRA
Well,
would be
yeah,
the,
everything's
it can
taxpayer,
higher
even if you do it via pioneer agreement, it's the
It's always-
people buying the homes that are paying the costs, it's not
Yeah.
anyone else.
well, back to Jared's question then, if we say we don't want to participate in the CRA and the money's coming from other entities, do we care if the school district's willing to give up so much money and the sewer district is, fire district, the county and mosquito abatement, then do we care?
I think at this point, CRA should Like Reed was saying, do we want it in the city or do we? You know,
From my standpoint, I have to vote. I have to go with what the people in my district are telling me. I get a lot of emails and they're all from down, from the west part of Hooper. And that say, we want it. And they're all from West Hooper. The emails that I get that say, please don't bring that into the city are from my district. I have to vote the way my district feels. My district does not want Smith. And that's just plain and simple, and I have to support them. And,
Even up in
how I
the
feel about it,
Freedom in the Wildwood area, Freedom area, they
I
don't want
get-
it either.
I get more emails from them saying on it than I do that they do. I get a few, but the majority of the ones that say they want West Hooper. And, so I have to go with what I hear and what I get from the district. I can't make it up, you know, I can't go with what I think is best or what everyone else thinks is best. I have to go with what they think is best. And it affects them. This affects them. And I've heard a lot of people from West Hooper say, well, it's almost Roy. It's so close to Roy, it really doesn't matter. And that's, I've heard that a lot. It's so close to Roy, it really doesn't matter. We should have the Smiths. And, I look who they are. I've done a lot of research on where I get emails from. And, you know, like I said, I've gotten some from East Hooper that want it. I'm not gonna say I don't, because I do get some. But the majority, the bulk of them do not want it. And that's where I have to go.
Can I read you a text I just got yesterday from your district? I think this is Jenny's Park, 5300, 5350. This person says, nobody in our entire area wants the Smiths. There are several that will move if it's approved. Personally, I'm against it. I moved from Layton to get away from apartments, traffic, and all the businesses, and moved to Hooper because it didn't have any of that. I don't think the Smiths is the savior for Hooper. The developers will expect Hooper to pay for the lift station and the infrastructure. They'll also want sales and property tax credits. Weaver County Sheriff Emergency Services will increase their fees, which all residents will pay. Central Weaver will increase their fees, which all residents will pay. Crime and traffic will increase. If it is approved, the city will have established precedents and have to approve all future rezoning applications or face lawsuits. Anyway, that's the gist of it.
And that's the kind of.
That's-
You can't say everybody's yes though, because I could tell you.
I was gonna say,
You can't say that.
That the
That's
bulk of what I get is they don't want, I do get some that want it,
Sure.
but the bulk, and I have to go with the majority of what my district wants.
That's what sent you emails.
Yeah, so that's yours. That's
That's my
different.
district.
So you
Okay.
got the other three here and one that's not here. What do you want to do? I'm tired of working. We're not gonna do it. Let's stop it.
And that's just me, you know, that's what I have.
That's how I feel too. I mean, I'm trying to represent the community, right? As an at-large council. And I'm trying to keep my ear out there and who's saying yay and who's saying no. And I'd say it's probably 70-30, if I was to guess.
And representing the people in your area is important. But keep in mind, people in your area don't have to run a city. And you gotta think about what's best for the city, and that's why you're elected. To educate yourself and decide those issues.
And I look at what went in the West Haven. And they represented the city and they made decisions and they ran them all out of town. They were all voted out of office. And they got a whole new council now. Because all the residents are so disapproving of what happened over there.
Well, we did hear that quite often. just don't let us become like West State, but I just want to be us here in Hooper. And I think, I'll just repeat myself. When we went through the general plan, we had a lot of participation with work groups, and I don't think anyone envisioned this type of commercial development coming. It's just bigger than what anybody, because again, the bigger the bigger the business, the more people it takes to support it, even generate the types of income that they're claiming they'll have. And if that's the case, and that means takes more people to live out here, growing faster than maybe we can even take care of it. I think Cooper is a lot different than other cities. I think it's challenging because we just don't move anything without mechanically moving it. Nothing's downhill from us.
And back to your point about Plain City, I think if this was that development, I think every one of us would said yes 2 months ago.
I think I could
Yeah,
agree with you. That size of the store and no other strings attached. I mean, in fact,
no, what is
if I were told my very words when Stewart first came, it's like, we don't even have to really change anything as long as there's no strings attached. Yeah, the land use map provides for a development of this type, commercial development. The zoning, since it's all zoned, or, the land use map showed it's all residential, but there's nothing that would have to change as long as there's no strings attached. And I still feel the same way.
So really Smiths can come with they can come because you have in your future land use commercial. So that's not even, so I guess I don't know why we're even then discussing, because just like you said, based on that, there's no strings attached. So if you're not requiring them to do a CRA, but if the housing wasn't, so really the Smiths could do whatever because they can, because we have that. And so then you're saying if it was
Well, I
3/4
don't want to play on my words, like trying to make it sound something different than what my intent is.
Well, to Dale's, we were told that the housing component had to go along with this. So we were told that. So some better, worse things attached, I guess, because we would have to change zoning and whatnot.
So you're thinking Smiths, but leave it the 3/4 acre?
Well, I didn't say that. I just said there were strings, that there were components that the requirements to meet their needs, we had to change. That's, I think, what Dale's getting at, so.
I think Plain City is a good comparison.
Where are you?
like I said, I wish there was option B and C.
Get what?
I wish there was option B and C.
Yeah.
Day one, option A was just never. And I think maybe there is, to my way of thinking, I wish an entirely different developer would walk in the door right now and say, hey, I can do this for you. Oh, let's talk about that, or sure, even mentioning something different. He's the Smith guy. That's all he is the Smith.
Not necessarily. He's a broker for a lot of them. But that's again, I asked you, Associated Foods, food, which is your Kent's and your smaller ones too. But that's, I guess I'd ask you, so you've been here, Ryan, 9.5 years. Has anybody else came?
Well,
Has there?
So if there's a little bit of twist to that, because we are out on the peninsula, but there's some information that's well known now. But we didn't know 2 years ago where a main corridor is going to come through. And so that changes everything.
Yeah.
I think to say that no one else has came is kind of an unfair statement because Hooper is evolving and we have a lot of open land. So I think, to Ryan's point, hey, this is the first person we're dating. Are we gonna do you marry the first person you date? Some do.
Back on the corridor, it's been on the books for years.
Well, it's been all over. That corridor has been,
The time.
it never did come up 5100
5100's been on the corridor
It-
since
it's had-
2000.
It's had.
So why is that? I mean,
Well,
just,
let's
just.
get on track.
No,
Let's
just wrap
finish.
this up.
Well, clearly the corridor's been built now.
Yeah.
Well, they've
It's gonna be
got it
expanded.
approved. Now they've got a problem once they get north of 4,000. Now they've got the environmental study will not let them put the road where they had planned. And the fact is that lot, that piece of property that sits up on the east church, on the west side of it was left there for the corridor that was gonna go down 4,700. That's what it's there for. So no, this has been all over. It hasn't been settled in on 5,100 West for that many years.
They were gonna move down the west side of our property. Down.
The city has 26 spaces out here.
Yeah.
We did.
Well, okay, so
So
where do we want to move from here then? Like Reed said, you know, we've
The,
talked about this lots and lots.
the staff feedback, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to go do bidding. That is a waste of time. The staff feedback for me would be there's no interest in a CRA. You could explore pioneering and bring it forward. And then other than that, I mean, there are some facts here. He did pay for an application before me for a rezone. And he could come for his rezone with the project as it's been going. You guys could vote on it, just to rezone for the project. No CRA, no conditional approval. Just are you going to rezone it? And you could vote on it. And so he could bring his project. But I mean, just for his feedback, there's no interest for a CRA, and you could go explore pioneering. Is that accurate? And then if you'd like to finish out his application, because he did pay money, and you know what I mean, if he did go through some iterations of a site plan, he could bring his rezone request to officially get approval or denial. And I think he's entitled to that. And then he couldn't be heard again for a year if it got denied.
And the rezone has to be for the commercial also, or just for the 3/4 acre?
I think just for the 3/4 acre residential, I think that the commercial, I
Sorry.
mean, we do have two commercials, right? But it seems that it would work, but that could be up for a little interpretation, but kind of negligible.
You can change the land use map for you, consider rezone. It's not allowed right now.
So you could,
Commercial is, on the land use. The
Well,
commercial is.
the residential.
Commercial.
So we could have him fill out his application to open the general plan. And then,
The commercial actually would be changed too, because this is a C2. Whereas we don't have a C.
See zone.
We have
we have a C1 and a C2, one's small neighborhood grocer and one's major. Yeah, this would definitely be in the major. So we could look at what our future is, but I wanted to say it was in line, but I'd have to look.
Yes, it's like,
Yeah, we do. Yeah, in the general plan, it does list them both. And this is just listed commercial.
I mean, that whole thing, I would need to go through all of this. We come to the day of voting, and we're gonna disapprove it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
here,
Yeah, right.
so
Yeah, we go out and find other funding for the lift station and then still get
Disapprove.
this approved.
Just we have no like it, for whatever reason. So.
Right, that's why he's. That's,
that's not fair for us to do that thing.
No.
I already feel like we've been a little unfair because like I said, we said, go do this, impact study, and they did, and they paid that
But-
money, and then they came back, and then it's
Well,
been
but that wasn't
a
the
year.
policy. That didn't come back positive. If I were to base it on that impact study that he said not to do, then my vote tonight would be no.
Oh, LRB will tell you it's absolutely positive. That's what their thinking is, and if you look at their summaries, they say positive.
The positive because it's not big. So it could be one.
Sorry, what is that? A monetary figure on impacts to the city. Traffic, population growth, how do you quantify a dollar amount? To the city.
Oh, here's your map. It's all just, it's just commercial.
One C two, but our future one is just us. General commercial, like.
Yeah.
There's no.
Where'd they put our current one in here? Is it just in our general plan? Just updated this website.
Well, yeah.
So Debbie, there's nothing sway you to say yes. Okay.
I can reach out to people and.
About tonight.
I don't see anything on the current. I think the future has the commercial across it, and I don't think it specifies C1 or C2. So I mean, if you wanted to make that distinction, but it's kind of a technicality. It's commercial nonetheless, but
I think the plan, the future plan, future land use plan just designates commercial, wouldn't be until you zone, you just have to zone.
sure.
Let's talk about this corner. Right, anybody approach us on
Yeah, let's don't move on till we finish what we're.
approaching us in the last 25 years? That's a prime piece of property that could be developed as commercial. Has anybody said a word about that?
Well, we talked. Yeah, it's promised he's grant is he's gonna put a Chick-fil-A there.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, C1 would be more like your mom and pop. C2 would be a C2 for sure. It's your, not just a local shopping, it'd be more of a regional or whatever that term is, like community.
Yeah, anytime, in Santa Cruz, you build a grocery store that Hooper shops at, or you build a marketplace that we're pulling people from all over. I guess that's the difference between a C1 and a C2.
Well, so what direction do you want us to give to them then? We're still undecided? We haven't really came up with anything. No one's, it sounds like,
Let's go first. It's not gonna be a CR, is that out of the? Yeah. Okay, is that what everyone said?
And what definition? Just public participation or?
Without, it's pretty clear you don't want to put, for sure, but without participation, is that something acceptable?
The question is,
So
this type of.
who's gonna administer? Someone have to.
Yeah, I don't know if that even could exist. You're right. You have to establish an agency and someone has to administer. I hope they're not participating. I don't even think it's a reality. But I don't know if that can exist.
That's, I'm with Debbie. I've had people to reach out to me on both sides. So it's really kind of like, what do you do? What is hopefully best long term, but, I don't know, but definitely for me, if there's a CRA, I'll wait for the next.
So CRA with or without voters' participation?
Well,
Altogether.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
So more of a primary agreement is what you're saying?
sure. Yeah, let them figure out how they're gonna get paid back on station. And we might have some, but by then our probably impact fees will increase them, so we'll make money out of it all. But anyway, that's what I'm at. So.
There, were you,
I agree with that. The motion I made,
you said no CRA in your motion, is that what you're saying?
right, no CRA, Hooper, city wouldn't be involved.
Well, the CRA without the people,
Yeah, right.
you wouldn't have that either.
Now, we're,
Okay, if there's a CRA, the Hooper's not involved in the CRA, are you okay with that or not?
well, in fact, I'd be more than fine. I
Then
don't,
again, the question would be who administrates it.
yeah,
It wouldn't be the city.
Wouldn't be the city.
it would not be the city.
I don't, so I don't know.
I think then sometimes you have like a bank or somebody that actually does the CRA, because the one time when they came, there was that, I can't remember his name, so I don't even want to say, because I'll say it wrong. He's one that does CRAs. So it would be an outside entity that
The
would.
county would be involved, because they're the ones collecting the tax, and they have to give whatever portions agreements to with whatever entity is.
Honestly, I just wish I could just know what's involved without any difference in opinion. This is just the way it is. The way we talked about tonight, I've had more people not interested. I'm not saying I get hundreds of people, telling me no or yes, but most people do not want, they want business, but not one like this. Not a Smith's Marketplace.
So back to Reed's question then on the CRA, then you would not be in favor of a CRA even if the city wasn't a part of it,
No, I'm not interested in CRA.
no matter what.
Right.
So that's three that are not interested.
That's easy. So back again, staff feedback is no CRA, right?
All right, so.
Great,
so I guess
that's
the next
easy.
question is, are
That's
you
great.
okay with what we're talking about? If it's done with something other than CRA, which would be, I presume, impact fees. And pioneering.
Well, that's pretty normal, right?
It is.
That's normal.
That's what you've done before.
People buy a lot, there's an impact fee that, so that you do your home.
You're requiring people to use the sewer to pay for the sewer.
So I guess that's what everybody's agreeable to if they're not agreeable to the CRA, right? Impact fees. Okay, what's next then?
Okay, next question would be, are you okay with the development homes? If you do patio homes and the things that were suggested in the planning commission, or not?
We have to follow our patio home ordinance and that would be good with me. I mean, that.
So the
Don't try to
suggestion,
adjust it. Don't try
but
to,
the suggestion of the planning commission, you'd be
Right.
okay.
yes.
And that was what?
They said-
Patio homes?
They
and-
said all patio homes, but some city council members had said they liked the half acre, third acre and patio.
Just around the edge. But then
Yes.
they also recommend like a 55 and older type development, so that it wasn't anything that
I
would be,
think that's the small hurdle, the housing component.
that's a small
I
hurdle.
don't like 55 and older.
Yeah, that-
Because I think you want to have kids.
Sure. And if it was affordable, I think that everybody,
Well, if that's not a hurdle, then are you basically, if they're willing to move ahead without the CRA, are you okay with moving ahead? And that would be a question I guess you'd have to ask them. If they aren't, then we're done. If they are, then we can
single
consider
resident homes.
crafting a motion, go back to your motion, basically. And pass. You got there through components. Now we'll be there for the total.
So I wrote down no CRA, completely independent, whether Herbert does or not, no CRA. So that then was the pioneering agreement, which has to do with impact fees. As far as the homes, it was the third acre, half acre patio homes, not agreeable to 55 and older, because some say it'd be nice to have some youngers. Is there-
I said that.
Oh.
I think the one over in some letters, there. Also, I know the planning commission spoke to the Smiths with going before
Yes.
housing. At least it needs to be, proportionately, like you can't build all the houses and then just leave.
No, we have to have some kind of guarantee.
Part as a bit proportionate.
Yeah,
And even if sell pads out for.
My question there would be where Stuart made it clear that he was not a residential developer. That there, see, to me, the loophole would be, well, okay, then he sells that, well, someone else has developed it, and we don't have the Smiths very far along, but now they're starting to, it's not my,
Wouldn't let him do it.
okay,
You're not gonna grant any building permits until.
okay, see, as long as that is,
We
That's
would,
all part of
we
it.
would have to have some houses though to pay for the lift station, because remember, we have this $2 million lift station, and you've got to have these homes paying their impact fees to be able to pay that $2 million. Right? Are you, am I misunderstanding, or you're thinking you just want Smiths to pay the full 2 million up front and then get that later from the houses, or are we getting that from the
I think they're
houses?
talking about that, plus going to other people who own land and seeing if they'll contribute.
So that's something we'd have to agree with, how much part of the Smiths is done in conjunction.
You couldn't.
That's something we
pay
would
more
never
than they use.
know, I mean, we wouldn't even know about, we wouldn't. If he worked something out with Doug Hamlin, or that's, I don't think that's something we would even need to.
Well, except for the city does the pioneering agreement, right? Isn't that what you said with Rawson's, the city was over that, so we would know.
Well, depending how it's collected. If Doug just gives them cash money to go towards it, we don't need to be involved in that.
I think you have to spend on houses for more and they get.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're gonna charge an impact.
So maybe that's, you could prioritize that, say your priority is not to have pioneering agreement at all, they collect it all up front, and they just increase the price of the house when they sell it, recover it. That's not what's been done in the past, you're right. In the past, we've agreed to impose an impact fee and get them paid back.
Yeah, and I think that if they're going to do something that they would need to at least build the Smith Junction house. He talked about doing all the housing pretty much first. And the Smiths, the commercial, because that's where we, the money, the commercial would have to build a lot with housing.
Is there a middle ground that you just set like some parameters, the Smiths has to be so far along and you get one phase of housing? Meet another goal, you
Yeah,
get
you can
two
do some of that,
phases.
but there's gotta be significant building, I think, so
Yeah.
you know that the
Yeah.
commercial's gonna go in.
I would assume once they pull a building permit and start, they're not gonna linger, they're gonna keep building the Smiths.
Smiths will put a deadline on. Once they start to make payments, they're gonna want you to that building. So you'll have a date move along pretty quick.
So am I reading it right, that if Smiths is willing to go ahead with arranging this whole thing without using a CRA, that you're okay with what was recommended by the planning? Is that a fair statement?
Does the city have any say whatsoever in what gets built
What kind of store?
outside of the Smiths? What kind of retail they do? Do we have any influence or say or?
Stuart said that in the meeting. He said that he would get us what we would, I mean, we can make suggestions. I don't know that you always can necessarily say, I want this or this, because then we could set ourselves up. Yes,
I think
Yes.
I think I heard them say they couldn't guarantee a particular one.
Yeah.
Couldn't guarantee a Chick-fil-A.
yeah. But we could certainly make suggestions, because I remember him saying
That
that
is-
Kaysville wanted, I think it was theaters, and then he got that. So yes, Brian, I think we could. And everything in the developer, we haven't really, because we haven't even got to the point yet to say design standards, if we would want it to look a certain way, because we haven't even ever, because I think we should be able to have some
So
input
put
on
that in the thing that you talked to him about, that the city wants to have at least input on the things that go in around in those other plots or
Okay.
paths.
We'll input in the commercial pads.
I think it's critical that we have the developers agreement be able to negotiate the setbacks and we don't have any commercial development standards, so we're gonna have to negotiate that in development.
Yeah, all that is pretty elementary.
Yeah.
So we gotta work.
Going holidays for those things.
Your what?
I put feelers out, still getting names back. I don't want it, so
We always,
Yeah,
I mean, I am, I just,
but you gotta use your consent.
Right. and
yeah.
I am, but I represent, I told them I would represent them. I got my license with me. And if I can't go against what I can't.
But you won't go after these guys signing such.
No, they're my friends, and every one of us has to make a decision based on what we have to do.
Or it's Lisa.
I don't know.
This is frustrating. I wish she was here too. Cause she could be the swing vote, you know?
Well, okay, so I don't know if you've come to where you're at, but I don't see a motion tonight. But I think if you go back to Stuart with those parameters, and if he's interested, then I think you need to be able to, at some point, do some start, otherwise you can't really.
You guys agreeance with that? With, because we don't want to field it again in a public meeting. So if we brought it forward for a conditional approval, is that how you guys want to process it, or do you want to process it differently?
I think we need to reach out to every council person. It's not here,
You want,
and that's gonna ask her
you need to educate her, somebody.
how she's gonna vote. Or what her choice is. Cause we can't do all this and then one councilman person sway it in the negative, you know what I mean? And put all this for naught. That's a total waste of time, and people's time is valuable.
Well, at least Debbie, understanding your spot, the other three of you are okay with it if Stuart's willing to do the things we talked
And still on the fence.
Maybe a little smaller store.
Smaller store had been done 3 days ago.
We got, put it in, throw that in there. I mean,
Yeah,
about. I don't know that he has that option.
No,
I think Smith's, well, I don't know, because,
well,
or at least with Smith's.
let's just. see.
well, and I don't know that we should have that option. It's commercial. You put it in the future land use map. For commercial. So I think if something comes, we either. So our next meeting won't be until July 17th. So that puts them off another month almost. Are we okay to give a conditional approval to move ahead with anything yet? Or are we still just,
I would say until you say no. You know, somebody needs to reach out to Lisa and say, where are you at with this? Before we move forward with anything. Otherwise, a waste.
we don't have a guarantee she'll be here even that night either though.
Well, let's start by approaching
Stuart?
Stuart of those
Okay.
things that you know are not gonna.
Yeah, we got some pretty good feedback.
And if he says,
Yeah.
if he says no, we're all
Just
done.
like we've said.
Yeah, yeah, it is
Just
what we
Just
said.
like we've said.
Yeah,
If he says okay, then I think it's a matter of approaching Lisa and.
Well, I think your motion was pretty clear.
Like this.
I just don't think the vote was, so no, I mean, we won't misinterpret what you said, I could direct the motion, that's what it is, and I just know, I think we unfortunately had to do administratively a whole nother roundabout because we never really gotta do this. It's like a come back again, I guess, we came back again. But yeah, we'll tell him those items, those are pretty cut and dry. We'll see if he wants to continue the development.
Okay,
I'll try and talk to Lisa in the meantime, just see where. I don't know what she's thinking. Does anybody have any idea? I guess we talk.
Well, I think you ought to invite her in next, they're all talking. Don't have so many have a meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Busy.
All right.
well, if nothing else then, we will have a motion to adjourn.